Reading. I was just thinking as I was beginning there, when I'm about to start my reading and I post the information in the system here, and I put in the title and all the rest of it, I get a choice for the YouTube part as to, there's about 10 different selections I can have as to where it's going to get posted to. And I typically pick people and blogs, because there's none that fits spirituality or religion, actually. I don't know why, but there isn't. And I was just wondering what would happen if I posted to other areas, such as gaming. I wonder how it would be if I posted to gaming one day, and then the people who are looking for gaming on YouTube suddenly see all this. Maybe I should start doing that and just pick a different one each day and just go for it. So some might not be appropriate, but well, I was just thinking that. Today's writer today is someone who I know somewhat. Her name is Dr. Tracy Brown. She is a religious science practitioner. She's actually based up in one of our spiritual centers in Dallas, Texas. And she taught my diversity class when I was in ministerial school. Then later on, she ran our organization for a while. So she's very well known around our system. And this actually is from 2020. So she's called it Change Begins Within. And I would say all change begins within. But anyway, the first quote is from Salima Abdul Ghafur, and I didn't look him up. I should have. He says, I'm going to read it literally. He says, God speaks to us in the Quran saying that he will not change our condition until we change what is in our hearts. He's obviously a Muslim. I don't know if he's a Sufi, a mystical Muslim or not. I should have looked him up. I didn't. I don't even know if he's American, if he's from the Middle East or where he is. I'll look him up afterwards. And I really should have done that beforehand, but I didn't. So there we are then. Ernest Holmes says, love is unity, understanding, harmony. It's as necessary to the well-being of the soul as food is for the strength of the body. And that was a Holmes reader on practical wisdom. This is what Tracy Brown has to say. How would I behave if I cared about the health and safety of the unsheltered as much as I care about the safety of the people living in my home? Who do I expect to stop race-based hatred and violence if I care about unity and love? Where would I go to ensure all the children in my community have enough food to eat if I want to be an example of love? When would be the right time to take a stand for the end of war if I believe in the spiritual principle of harmony? Then she goes on to say, the world I live in is complex. I alone cannot solve all social issues, but the choices I make contribute to when and how all social issues will be resolved. Sometimes I just want to leave it to the politicians to figure it out. Sometimes I just want to leave it to the political activists to fight it out. Sometimes I just want to leave it to the people in the next community to fork out money. Sometimes I just want to leave it to the next generation to force the old ways out. Then she goes on to say, but I also know that spirit lives within me. Spirit lives as me, and spirit lives through me. I must change what is in my heart and soul if I want the world to change. I must be the example of love. I must be the example of unity. I must be the example of harmony. I must be the example of a world that works for everyone. And as I said, that was Tracy Brown, Dr. Tracy Brown, religious science practitioner, published August 2020. As I said, she taught my diversity, it's diversity and inclusion class or just diversity class, one of the others. But she did give us a lot of pause for thought. That it's not just enough to think good thoughts, that we have to do more than that. Some people cannot. So looking at this on a practical level, what can I do to help make the world a better place? Well, I've said before, there's lots of different things that we can each do. The first one is to do our spiritual work. And if you are a praying person, however you define praying, I define it as doing spiritual mind treatment. And also meditation and breathing, for instance. So I don't know how you define it, or you might not even call it spiritual work, but that's okay. But having that grounding, that foundation, that we have something strong to actually move out from. And I realize to a lot of an extent, I'm preaching to the choir. Tracy Brown was actually on our soul. I forget when she was. She did a soul session for us. It's a while since. That's all I can say. And she was pretty good. And I'll say this for her. She doesn't mince words, and she puts her money where her mouth is. And she doesn't gloss over things. So she does talk about things like white privilege. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but there is such a thing as white privilege. I know if I walk down the street, I am less likely to suffer any issues than somebody who's of a different color than I am, or obviously a different racial origin than I am. Driving, it's the same thing. I mean, I know that. And I can do some things I can do about it, or for instance, be an active member of our Be the Change Committee and help put on the soul sessions, which broadcast to the world ideas in which we can change the world, and getting people to look at how other people live. I mean, I have lived in the Middle East, for instance. I know what it's like out there. Well, I don't know what it's like to be in a war zone like now, but I do know about all the issues between Jews and Palestinians, for instance, Jews and Arabs. And I've lived in areas of the world. Well, I grew up in an area which was an issue for religion. If I grew up as Catholic, and a Catholic was 10% of the population, and it was an issue. There was discrimination. There had been for centuries. There's lots and lots of different kinds of discrimination. What can we do against it? First thing I think we can do is to do what Jesus suggested, which is to pray for our enemies. In other words, to pray for those people who we think have views that are so different than us that we don't think we can reconcile them. That is one of the first things that we can do. We can also be part of movements, as I said, like our Be the Change Committee, which actually brings to people's attention issues that are in the world. We can even do things like helping the environment. Tracy Brown doesn't mention it here, but other writers in the fairly recent past have mentioned it. The environment is a big issue. We can do our bit. We can do our recycling. We can not waste food. We can try and use things which are reusable. And I'll give you one simple example. When we go shopping, quite often, especially if I go to somewhere that they're going to give me bags, if I don't take my own bags, I'll take an insulated bag if I'm going to buy stuff that needs insulating. In Europe, I wouldn't dream of going shopping without my own shopping bag. Why? Because they really discourage the use of plastic bags. If you want to get a bag in the store, you have to pay for it. Everybody takes their own bags. It's just the way it is. So there's lots of little ways that we can make the world a better place. And Tracy Brown actually says at the end, but I also know that Spirit lives in me. Spirit lives as me. Spirit lives through me. I must change what's in my heart and soul if I want the world to change. I must be the example of love. I must be the example of unity. I must be the example of harmony. I must be the example of a world that works for everyone. And I can do that First of all, by changing my thinking. And also, there's lots of little ways you can make the world better. As I said, my wife, Barbara, compliments people a lot. When we're out shopping, she goes out of her way to compliment people. Oh, and she did it the other. That's a really nice dress you're wearing. Oh, look, those shoes really match your dress. And she said this to a lady the other day, and the lady said, well, I didn't do it deliberately. I didn't buy them to match. I just happened to have these shoes that match this dress, and I wore them today. So lots of little ways. And then in big ways, the ones of us who do have power and authority, who do have influence in the community, use it for the good. You know, Creative Life Spiritual Center is part of Faiths Together in the Woodlands here. Once a year, we put on an event for Thanksgiving, and it's from faiths right across the spectrum, really. Christian, Muslim, New Faith, Latter-day Saints, let me say, Hindus, Baha'i, Unitarians, Unity, right across the spectrum. And that is one way, and we've thought about ways that we can get this message out other than I'm getting tongue-tied, other than at Thanksgiving. So we are doing things actively, and to talk, walk your talk, and also to go on social media and strike a balance between just going out there and turning into somebody whose ideas are completely opposite yours and just making suggestions. You know, there's an old saying that says, and I'm going to make it gender non-specific, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. A person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So we have to look at the ways and means that we do these things, but we have to do them. And if necessary, we have to speak out against injustice. You know, I've seen it on the TV. Somebody said, you can't do that. That's not fair. That's not reasonable. So, but there it is. That's my preaching for today. That's Tracy Brown's preaching for today. I cleanse my heart of hatred and commit to be in harmony with all people. That is where you can start if you want. I cleanse my heart of hatred and commit to be in harmony with all people. It's simple, but it's not easy. But we should do it, right? So that's really, as I said, all I got to say. Reverend Lisa will be on tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. What I was just thinking, Reverend Lisa is reading from the Science of Mind textbook, so it just carries on chapter after chapter. I normally read one person throughout a whole month, but this month I'm reading different people each day, and the readings that Reverend Lisa did before were actually different people each day. So I can kind of get an idea of what she went through when she read all that stuff. So check in with her. She will remind you, as I'm going to remind you now, all this begins with a good foundation, which starts with self-care. Self-care and do your spiritual work. And I tell you, just doing that on its own, the world will be a better place. So, till next time, namaste.